So a lot of people have been waiting for the ethical vegan extremists, crybabies for short, to finally come out and address some of these hard-hitting questions that they tend to just brush off and ignore. And lo and behold, that vegan teacher decided to be the activist to step forward and take the stage and address some of these questions. By some of these questions, what I mean are the ones like, well, is it vegan to kill bugs that are attacking you, like bees or ants or lice, you know, things that are invasive to you? And we'll go over her answer on that shortly. Another question is, oh, well, how is it vegan to consume even your crops that require animals to die for your food to be processed? Another question that will be answered, as well as several others. I'm going to give you a spoiler right now. You will not be impressed with these answers. It's a lot of the same old hypocritical bullshit that you probably already expected that really doesn't justify anything at all, at least not in terms of being a vegan. And not just that, but of course, they find a way to, again, change the definition of vegan so that it fits the narrative in the moment. That's what they tend to do a lot that I've noticed. It's, if it's convenient for veganism to mean one thing in this moment, then that's what it means. But if it's not convenient for it to mean that in a different moment, then that means veganism means something else. They change the definition to fit every single situation. And of course, that's exactly what Miss Katie has done here again.
Hey students, it's Miss Katie, that
Crybaby
teacher. I want to talk to you about a couple of things to do with
Crybabyism.
some things that maybe you didn't think of before. As
Crybabies
who care about the animals and want to end their suffering, we often talk about it in those terms. But here's why we have to be careful about the language that we use. If we focus on ending suffering, here's the kinds of things that people will say to us. They will say to us, well, if you don't want animals to suffer and you're trying to eliminate suffering as much as possible, what on earth are you going to do if, let's say, you get head lice or one of your children does? You know, you can't possibly kill all of these lice because you don't want to be part of murder, right? That's what they're going to say. But here's your answer. You're going to say to them that you are allowed to protect yourself. If you are being attacked, whether it is by head lice or a dog or a mosquito or even another human, you are allowed to fight back, even to the point of ending that person or that animal's life if they are relentless and you need to protect yourself.
You know, initially when I first heard this, when she first said this and I heard it for the first time, I thought to myself, I was like, okay, that's actually decent enough of a point, and it doesn't seem all that hypocritical. I'm like, okay, that's fine, fair enough. If something attacks you, you have the right to protect yourself. But the thing is, at the very beginning, she also just says you have the right to protect yourself in general, which creates actually a logical inconsistency, because most people cannot survive well on a vegan diet. Yes, it's very, very true. I can give you a billion examples of people that did this shit perfectly. Took all their supplements and everything, and according to doctors, their nutrient mineral levels were role models, basically. Yet, they were still suffering from the vegan diet because even though they had these nutrients present in their system, they weren't exactly being utilized properly because they didn't come from the sources that they should have, i.e. animal products. Because the fact of the matter is, some people, most people, just don't metabolize certain plant nutrients as well as they do with animal nutrients. And a lot of them also have to go through some sort of conversion within your body. And again, those conversions aren't one-to-one. So you might be having numbers of vitamin A that says you're healthy, but in reality, you might only be using a fraction of that total vitamin in your system, which isn't enough. But anyway, here's a logical inconsistency. If you have the right to protect yourself, then that means you have the right to protect your health and well-being. That's the same thing. It is no different. And if in order to do so, you have to consume meat to be healthy, and don't even just take the regular person, even though most regular people need some sort of animal products. And it doesn't necessarily need to be meat. The fact of the matter is a lot of vegetarians actually are quite healthy because they are still consuming animal products. They're still consuming dairy. They're still consuming eggs. They're still consuming things that come from animals that give them those nutrients that they actually need. Now, consider a person that has some sort of dietary issue where they just simply cannot digest proteins from plants, which it is more difficult to digest plant proteins for most people. And because of that, effectively, if they eat plants, it makes them deathly sick. And if they continue to be vegan on this diet, they surely will die. Well then, to protect themselves, they must consume animal products, and you just approved of that. You just approved of people being able to protect themselves. This is no different than protecting yourself from head lice. Even though the head lice probably isn't going to kill you, but it is causing harm to you in some way, shape, or form, or harm to your children, and this is causing harm to your body, and you need to protect yourself, which again, that vegan teacher approved.
And then, of course, there will be people who say to you that you are not allowed to live in the house because in order to live in a house, you will have had to cut down some trees in order to make that house, and therefore you maybe have left some bird without a home, all kinds of things like that. In this case, once again, you're going to remind people that you are against the exploitation of animals.
Let me stop you right there, crybaby witch. According to your people's definition here, the Crybaby Society, the Crybaby Society defines crybabyism as a philosophy and way of living which seeks to exclude, as far as is possible and practicable, all forms of exploitation of and cruelty to animals. So what does that tell us? You've once again fundamentally changed the definition of crybabyism. You excluded that part of cruelty to in order to once again fit this particular situation. No, it's not about it's ending suffering exactly. It's just about exploitation in this particular case. Even though in many other videos you'll talk about how cruelty is also a big part of it, but in this moment, it's just exploitation because that works for your narrative that you're trying to spin here. Now let me give you the further hypocrisy. Don't you think evicting a bird, a rat, a snake, a gerbil, a groundhog, any assortment of animals, don't you think evicting them from their home because they were there first, for the building of your home is not only cruelty, but isn't that also exploitation anyway? Right. No, don't worry. I'll give her a moment to cook because she has an answer to this. Trust me, she does. She really does.
You are able to live your life. You are allowed to dig a hole in the ground to build yourself a house, even if a poor little worm gets destroyed along the way, because it's not something that you're doing on purpose. The goal is to end the exploitation of animals.
Hear that? She just said it. As long as you didn't do it on purpose, it's okay to kill animals. That's what she said, verbatim. I mean, not verbatim, but in my head, verbatim. Anyway, she even gives some further examples, which I'm not gonna bother showing because I can just tell you. She basically says like, oh, if you're, you got a towel on your balcony or something, you shake it off and there was a spider at the end of it and the spider falls to its death, that's okay because it was an accident. By that logic, those people that, I just made a video about this last night, that threw that heavy object over that balcony or railing, I don't know, it's not really a balcony, railing at that mall, and if that hit somebody, well, it was an accident. Are they going to be absolved of all wrongdoing because they didn't intend to kill anybody? The goal was to throw it over the edge and have it just hit the ground, not a person. No, they're still responsible for that person's death if it were to have killed someone. So you can't just say, oh, well, it wasn't intentional, so it's fine. That's not how it works, especially since you ethical crybaby losers like Tosh Peterson want to equate humans and animals 100%, say that there's no moral difference between us. Therefore, what's happening in the dairy industry is no different than the Holocaust. Yes, you guys want to make that argument. You do it all the time. You guys say this is the biggest Holocaust in history all the time. But I don't understand. So are humans only equivalent to animals when it's convenient for you so that you can live in a nice house even though it came at the expenses of hundreds, if not thousands of animals that were evicted from their homes, possibly killed when the landscaping happened? Or even just the maintenance of being in a home. Think about the electricity. That's exploitation. You're using animals to create those forms of energy. Or just driving your car. You're using tons and tons of dead animals to operate your motor vehicle every single day that you drive. But it's not intentional. How's it not intentional? Think about it. If the people landscaping or whatever, or getting ready to build a home, they know that animals are going to be evicted and animals are going to die. In order for this to happen, then it's intentional. Again, I'll give you another example. We'll go back to the kids that throw the big object over the mall thing, right? If they were like, if I hit somebody with this, I know they're going to die and I'm going to do it anyway. Doesn't that make it intentional? How is that any different? You guys, you use this veil, like you use this to protect yourself, right? This whole like mental gymnastic of, well, I know animals are dying for me to eat corn and for me to eat rice and for me to eat everything that I eat because their land is being taken from them and they're also being killed by large farm machines, but it's not intentional, so that makes it okay. No, once again, let's go to her little analogy where she's talking about if there's a spider hanging on the edge of her towel or whatever and you shake it off and it plummets to its death. Well, what if there was like a person hanging on to it? I know, crazy. You don't see them, but you do that. Let's say you're driving down the road and you're not paying attention, right? And a person is in that road walking and you accidentally, swerve to the right and you hit that person, you kill them, right? You're still at fault. You weren't paying attention. It was an accident. You didn't mean to kill them. But guess what? You're still going to jail for involuntary manslaughter. Congratulations. How is this any different? Be logically consistent. If you want to go around having the moral high ground and preaching that veganism is the only way to live, if not you're a psychopath without empathy, you're an evil person, then you need to really practice what you preach. You need to be like those vegans that go live in the goddamn forest and live off the land that they cultivate themselves, that they use solar panels for their electricity. They avoid all exploitation and suffering of animals to that as far as practicable, which is what the definition says, as far as practicable. You aren't doing that. You are not avoiding suffering and exploitation of animals as far as practical, because there's more you could do. You could not live in a house. You could not drive a car. You could grow your own crops where no animals will be harmed. You won't use any pesticides. You won't use a phone, because using a phone takes up electricity. It takes up resources that harms animals. You would consider incidental deaths to the same degree that you would consider slaughtering an animal for food, because at the end of the day, it's no different.
Some people will say to you things like this: oh, but the backyard chicken that I have doesn't mind if I take her eggs. She just leaves them there. So what's the harm? I'm not hurting her. Now, think about what we just learned. What would your response be? Veganism is a philosophy based on not utilizing animals. Their eggs belong to them. So we want to get into this mind frame of thinking of animals as being on their own, by themselves. They have a right to live. They have a right to keep their eggs, their honey, and their milk.
All right, so let me get this straight once again. So you're saying that somebody that has chickens who are basically family to them, that produce eggs and they use those eggs and they eat them because the chicken's not going to do anything with them, you still say that is wrong because that is exploiting those animals, because those are those animals' eggs. Okay. Did you ask the fucking chicken if they give a shit about you taking the eggs? Because I'm pretty sure the vast majority of chickens don't care so much about their non-fertilized eggs. They have plenty of food to eat, assuming the person that has these chickens is feeding them. And they probably do not have an issue with you taking their damn eggs. So who are you to step in and speak for them? Now, obviously, I'm gonna move on from that exactly because that's just stupid. This is probably one of the dumbest things she has ever said, and that is a tough feat to beat. But let's consider the hypocrisy once again. So take almonds, take avocados, take a lot of other plants, for instance. There's a lot of fruits that we consume, that vegans consume regularly, that are only produced because humans take tons and tons and tons of bees to pollinate these trees and grow these fruits. And then the vegans, they benefit from the slave labor of these bees, contributing to the deaths of trillions of bees every single year because of this. But once again, her justification is, well, we're not killing the bees on purpose. Well, you're using them, you're commodifying them, you're exploiting them. You're using them for your benefit. You just said you can't do that as a vegan. So guess what? Pretty much the vast majority of fruits and nuts and things that you eat on a daily basis, out the window. You can't consume those because it requires exploitation of animals and bees to produce these things. And bees, some people try to argue, well, they're insects. Bees are sentient. And last time I checked, vegans are really against any exploitation of anything that is sentient. That vegan teacher has stated this very clearly, and bees are sentient, which means you are profiting off the labor of a sentient being. Now this is really interesting because you are also making the argument that you shouldn't use honey, you shouldn't use milk, because again, profiting off the labor of these animals, these insects. Why can't you eat honey, but you can eat the fruits? You can eat all these other fruits that bees are also contributing to creating. If it wasn't for them, you wouldn't have them. They wouldn't be accessible. You need the bees to be exploited to produce these fruits, just as the same way as they produce honey. But for some reason, it's not okay to eat honey just because you guys decided that, because the vegans decided it's not okay to eat honey. It's not okay to consume milk, but everything else they produce, that's fine. That we decided that because we love to be so logically inconsistent. Crybabyism has to be one of the most inconsistent philosophies to ever exists. And I don't even think it'd be qualified as a philosophy, because I feel like most philosophies have to be consistent in what they teach and what they practice. And the problem with veganism, crybabyism really, is that it's not. It never is. They always create these rules for everybody else, but they don't apply to them, or they create these weird standards that are so logically inconsistent. But if they were to make things logically consistent, there would be no vegans. There would be no vegans. It would be literally impossible to live if they actually were logically consistent, because like I said, most fruits and vegetables, they couldn't consume anything unless they basically grew it themselves. And most of them, the vast majority of them, are not willing to do that. Or if they wanted to be logically consistent, then they wouldn't have a moral high ground, because then they would agree that it is okay for people to consume meat, to consume animal products, because it comes at the expense of animals just as well as their food choices come at the expenses of animals. Now there's more to this video, but I don't give a shit about it. That's it. Consider purchasing my book. If you enjoy this video, feel free to like and subscribe buttons. Till next time.